Winter 1945. The world had turned white and silent like a graveyard buried under snow. The Eastern Front stretched endlessly, a desolate field of ice and smoke. Erich Weiss, a 23-year-old German medic, trudged through the wreckage, his hands stiff with cold and blood. Around him lay twisted bodies, friend and foe alike, half covered by snowdrifts that gleamed like ghosts in the moonlight. His satchel clinked softly with morphine vials and gauze, though he knew it wouldn't be enough. The moans of the dying echoed faintly through the still air. Erich dropped to his knees beside a wounded soldier, pressing bandages against torn flesh, whispering, "Hold on, camarade." But the man's eyes had already gone glassy. Artillery thundered in the distance. Snow fell like ash. Erich closed the soldier's eyes and stood, his breath fogging in the freezing wind. He had been trained to save lives, but here, in the ruins of the Reich, mercy often meant ending suffering, not preserving it. He looked toward the horizon. A faint orange glow marked the approach of the Soviet front. Between life and death, Erich stood alone, a ghost among the dying, clutching his medical bag as though it still meant something. Days later, Erich found shelter in the remains of a bombed-out village. The houses were nothing but stone skeletons, windows shattered, roofs gone. He searched for survivors, stepping carefully through frozen rubble. The silence was complete until he heard it, a faint cry. He followed the sound into what had once been a church. The walls were scorched black, the altar shattered. Behind a fallen beam, a child was hiding, a Russian girl, no more than 8, wrapped in rags, eyes wide with terror. Her hands clutched a small wooden doll, the paint chipped away. Erich froze. She was the enemy, or so he had been taught. But in that moment, all he saw was fear, the same fear he'd seen in the eyes of his dying comrades. Slowly, he lowered his rifle, crouching low. "It's all right," he whispered in broken Russian. "I won't hurt you." The girl hesitated, then reached out. Her hand was trembling, her skin pale from cold. Erich wrapped her in his tattered coat and gave her a piece of frozen bread from his pack. She ate silently, watching him with eyes that no longer trusted the world. For the first time in months, Erich felt something stir inside him. Not victory, not duty, but a fragile spark of humanity. The following night, Erich and the girl took refuge in an abandoned farmhouse on the edge of the woods. He tended her frostbitten hands by candlelight, using the last of his supplies. Outside, snow fell in thick, ghostly sheets, muting every sound except one: distant engines. The Red Army was near. He knew they would shoot him on sight. A German uniform was a death sentence now. But the child could survive. He planned to lead her to safety, maybe to a Soviet unit that would take her in. Still, part of him knew the risk. If they found her with him, they'd think he'd taken her hostage. The girl, sensing his unease, tugged gently on his sleeve. She pointed to the cross on his medic's armband and whispered something in Russian, a single word he understood: "Doctor." He smiled faintly, though his heart ached. He'd been called many things during the war, but doctor reminded him who he once was. Suddenly, gunfire cracked through the night. Erich pulled her close, blowing out the candle. Shadows flickered across the snow. Soviet scouts were sweeping the village. He took the girl's hand and led her into the forest, each step sinking into deep snow. Behind them, the ruins of the farmhouse burst into flame. By dawn, they reached a frozen river. The girl's small hand clung tightly to his as they searched for a safe crossing. The ice groaned beneath their boots, cracking like distant gunfire. Erich's breath came in ragged clouds. Exhaustion gnawed at his bones. He could see the faint outlines of Soviet troops on the far bank, too far to call out, too close to risk being shot. He knelt, meeting the girl's eyes. "We have to cross," he whispered. "You must be brave." Step by cautious step, they moved over the ice. Wind howled through the valley, carrying the echoes of war, artillery, shouting the death rattle of a dying world. Halfway across, the ice gave a low, ominous creak. Erich froze. The girl whimpered. "Don't move," he whispered. Slowly, he shifted his weight, guiding her forward. A crack split the surface. Freezing water surged up, biting into his legs. He gasped but pushed her onto solid ice. "Go," he shouted. She crawled the rest of the way, falling into the arms of a Soviet soldier who'd rushed to help. Eric smiled weakly, relief flooding him. But as he tried to pull himself up, the ice gave way completely. The river swallowed him whole, silent, cold, final. Spring came late that year. When the snow finally melted, the Red Army buried their dead by the riverbank. Among them, they found the body of a German medic, frozen, still clutching a small satchel marked with the Red Cross. In his coat pocket lay a wooden doll. The Russian girl, now safe in a refugee camp, kept that doll close. She would tell the nurses that a German doctor had saved her. They never believed her. Why would they? Enemies don't save each other. But she knew the truth. Years later, when the war was nothing but history books and monuments, she returned to that river. The ruins were gone, the snow replaced by wildflowers. She placed the same wooden doll on the ground and whispered, "Thank you." The wind moved through the trees softly, like a sigh, or perhaps a voice. Maybe it was only the breeze, or maybe it was Eric Weiss, the medic who had remembered his humanity when the world had forgotten its own.